Hi everyone. Since I published my first book, I've received a number of questions from people who are interested in either writing their own book or just curious about the book writing process. So I thought I'd put together this Q&A just to answer some of the common questions that I've been receiving. Hope you enjoy it. I think the very first thing I always say is just put the idea on paper. I think for a lot of people, you have this idea in your mind, but getting to put it down on paper tends to be the challenge. And I think that's what you really need to do. You just need to write the book, because once you have done that, you actually have a manuscript, you have something to work with, and it's no longer just an idea. What I also did was I went to my local bookstores and I looked through a number of children's books just to see how they are laid out, to see how they are written, to understand like the number of words that you need to ideally have. I did a little bit of research online as well with regards to that. Um, and yeah, it's really just about writing down that idea and putting it on paper, because once you have it on paper, you can actually it's easier to ask for help from people. I think a lot of the time people ask for help and they don't really have anything to work with other than an idea. So as a starting point, I would suggest that you put your idea down on paper. Toni Morrison said that if there's a book you wanted to read but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. And that's really what it was for me. I have been learning over and over the lesson of listening to my inner voice. And it's something that I wanted to write for children and hope that they, and my son included, are able to learn that lesson much earlier in life. So that's why I wrote the book. So this is a very common question, is once I had my idea down on paper, what I did was go online and look for an illustration style that I liked. When I was very clear exactly what I wanted Sandy to look like, I then looked for illustrators that have a similar style. And I literally went onto Instagram and I looked up illustrator, and some illustrators popped up, um, and like through going through their profiles and their friends profiles, I eventually landed on Tabiso. And when I found his profile, I thought, okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And what I did is I DM'd him and I said, look, this is the idea I have. Would you be interested in working with me? He agreed. I then drew up a brief for him, explaining what the book is about, explaining the type of illustration style I'm looking for. I gave him some references of what I want Sandy to look like. And I knew, like, for example, that I wanted her to have big curly hair, and to have either freckles or a dimple or something of a sort that just makes her like unique. So I briefed him that way, and I asked him to just draw up what he thinks Sunday could look like, and then he just sent me through an idea, which I was very happy with, and we took it from there. But I think what's important really is for you to be clear, or at least have an idea of what you want this character to look like, and the illustration style that you're looking for. You can always also go to your local bookstore and have a look at different books and see what speaks to you, and then by doing that, then you kind of have a sense of what you want the end goal to look like. So yeah, that's the process I followed. A very big concern for a lot of people is the cost of illustrations. I mean, it is an art, and we have to pay people what their work is worth. So it isn't cheap. I'll say that. But you can always find someone who can do what you're looking for, and hopefully you can agree to a price. But it isn't cheap. I mean, it is an art after all. And so, yeah, that is just something that you're gonna have to negotiate and find someone who is at the price point that you can afford. Okay, so I self-published my book. I again literally Googled book publishers, and I looked through a number of websites, and then I found a publisher that I wanted to go with. I called them up and I said, "This is what I have. What can you guys do for me?" And they were able to connect me with everyone from an editor to a proofreader. I already had my illustrations done, so at least that was all sorted. And they prepared quotes for me for the printing, and eventually prepared a sample. I think my suggestion is to find someone who can help you through the process and walk you through it. And that's what I got from my publisher. They were able to walk me through the entire process and kind of make it easy for me, because I didn't know what I was doing. So it was important for me to work with someone who does know what they're doing. So that would be my suggestion. Go with someone reputable, go with someone who's done this a million times before, and let them guide you through the process. You learn quite a bit as you go, and you improve from there. I think it's also important to be okay with not really knowing what to expect, right? I think for me, this entire thing was a trial and error, and it was deliberate, because with my first manuscript, it sat for years and years without me getting to a point of getting it published. And with this book, I told myself that I'm going to make this happen, and I was prepared to deal with whatever comes. I was prepared to be to experiment, and this is what this has been for me. I am learning as I'm going, and I think you have to keep an open mind and be okay with learning as you're going. I think by the time I published my second book, I was a lot more familiar with the process, but even that had provided me with quite a lot of learnings, which I'll take into my third book. So I think don't be too worried about knowing what you're doing. There are people out there and there are services out there um, that can make this entire process easier for you. Look them up online. They are there, and at a cost. There are people who can do pretty much everything for you when it comes to publishing your own book. So, yeah. So yes and no. You can make a lot of money, but as an unknown author, it's probably unlikely. But for me, it wasn't about making money. It was about learning the process. It was about establishing myself. It was about getting my first book out, and taking it from there. So so with self-publishing, you do pay out quite a lot of money to get that book produced and into stores, and making that money back is not quite that easy. But I think for me, it's more about the long-term goal. It's more about establishing myself as an author, and learning the process, and getting better at this as I go. So if you're in it for some money or some immediate money, I don't necessarily think that is going to be all that possible. But you never know. I mean, some people publish their first books and it's a bestseller. But I think, yeah, you need to be clear what your goals are and what it is you want out of the process. For me, it wasn't money, so I'm probably not the best person to speak to about how to make a lot of money out of a book. But yeah, so far so good, but really it's not lucrative. It hasn't been lucrative for me. Not yet, anyway. So I've also spoken to a few people who are so worried about no one liking their book that they don't get started. Look, for me, it was really about writing something primarily for myself. I wrote this book because I wanted to talk about this topic, and it's a topic that I thought is important for a lot of people. But it wasn't really about anyone liking the book. It was about getting something out there that I think is or might be useful for some people. I know for a fact that a lot of people grapple with this idea of listening to their inner voice, and following their instincts. So it was, my writing this book was to try and serve those people. And I think maybe that's how you need to look at it. I don't really know, but for me, that's how I look at it. I look at it as a service, and if it serves one person, then that's enough. It was never really about, making everybody like it. And to be honest with you, I have had a few people who have a really big reaction to the book and who've said to me, I really needed this, or this really touched me. And that's enough for me. That it's enough for me that one person appreciates the book. And I don't know if that helps you, but really you need to be clear on what it is you need out of this, and maybe find a way of making it make sense for yourself. For me, making sense of it is looking at this as a service rather than anything else. So if people like it, great. If the general public doesn't like it so much, then that's also okay. Hopefully I have served the one or two people who really needed that book, and that's how I look at it.